Welcome back to Studio One. And Charles, just before we went for break, you used a number and you said 143 countries. And that number sounded familiar to me, but I believe there is more than that. So talk to me that you once mentioned about the economic and trade promotion offices for the province of Ontario that in your time as the assistant in that ministry that you had established. Or
Absolutely, yeah. Well, some of the major countries that we're looking at for Canadian exports, the BRICS countries, but Pakistan and the Asian market is huge. Yeah. And the developing countries. So we have to do more in terms of trying to attract more of that trade possibilities. The 143 countries are the countries across the world that are beyond the G20 who are competing. Do you know that now in Ontario, we'll have one of the lowest tax systems in comparison to all of the United States in trying to encourage those investments to come to Ontario. And we're also able to compete, not just because we're trying to make our tax system more equitable or more effective, but we have skilled labor, second to none. We have a universal health care system that attracts companies to come here because that's one issue that they don't have to worry about. We have an excellent education system that enables those companies to source great workers. And to make it competitive by way of our tax system enables them to get better returns and invest and create more jobs in Ontario. There's a number of issues through that legislation that we put forward. It wasn't just for business, it was also for people to establish their jobs and to come to Ontario. And that was part of the whole plan to open Ontario. It's about energy. Remember, the economic situation was dire 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We've been able to recover 95% of those jobs in Ontario compared to only 13% in the United States.
That's amazing.
So we're doing things right. We need to do better. We'll continue to invest. We'll continue to work with partnership with everyone to try to improve.
You keep doing what you're doing, and you keep getting invited to Studio One as a guest. You don't do that, right? And you get invited as a guest, but then there's a different sort of question altogether, right? So that's why.
Well, your job's to keep our feet to the fire and keep us.
You're doing a fine job, as a matter of fact. But let me talk about also our outreach plans for the province of Ontario as well in other countries. You mentioned the trade offices. I'm also talking about last month when Sandra Pupatello was in the UAE and we were talking about the bilateral trade relationship and everything. Unfortunately, because of, again, factors and reasons beyond your and my control, because then they go to the federal level, the relationship with those states was not to a certain, situation where it could be conducive towards what we were trying to achieve at that time. But that's again a matter I would invite somebody else to talk about, because that's not yours.
Keep in mind that Ontario represents about 40% of Canada's entire GDP. And as a sub-jurisdiction, we were the only sub-government involved with the Auto Pact. So when we were out there trying to bail out and trying to figure out how to protect the auto industry, it was the federal government of the United States, the federal government of Canada, and the only other government involved was the government of Ontario.
Yep.
And we were one of the investors, and of course things that were covered, and we've done much better to try to protect those jobs, those industries, those pensions. There's a number of things that come into effect. And it's a big part of, Ontario is a huge participant.
So a banker, a politician with a heart, I wanted to use another word as well for you before we started, because of a certain legacy that you have, and that is the Lakeview legacy.
Yeah.
You have accomplished a lot in that area. Yeah. You are a born citizen of the Lakeview area, and you have lived up to protect that legacy.
Sure.
You've done a beautiful job there. We really thank you for that. And the abolishing of 2 power plants in the Lakeview and Clarkson area as well. Yeah. You were the key element behind them, behind abolishing of those, so the movement to abolish them, not to establish them. And we are sure that one day soon we will get rid of the GE booth as well, when the time is right for that, and you will be primary force behind it. So tell me something, you were telling me about the TTC essential services before we started talking, and I honestly do not have any idea on the subject, and I want you to educate me and my audience on that.
All right. But before I go into TTC, I am very passionate about the waterfront in Mississauga. As Arshad mentioned, I grew up in Mississauga South. It's where I went to school. It's where my family and children now live. And it was at a time when I was growing up an industrial area. Here we are, the pristine waterfront of the Lake of Ontario, full of factories, and it was important. It did its economic power. It was part of what we are. But those companies have now died off, and we're trying to have access to the lake and access to our waterfront. We want those beaches and those restaurants and those
in art and cultural activities.
Beautiful. That's we want Studio1 to come down to Mississauga South and have a studio right by the water. That's what we'd like to see. But power is also required, and it just seems it would seem a crime to have it right on our waterfront when we have all our future generations looking to us to do better. And we're talking, Arshad, 600 acres of prime waterfront land in South Mississauga, which is underutilized.
And most of it has been reclaimed now, right?
No,
Not yet.
but we're doing our utmost to protect that
We're on schedule.
and to do what we can to build those marinas and access and public access so that everyone has an ability to go to the waterfront. So I'm very excited. It's going to be a long project, but we're going to get there. We'll do our part to try to help everyone have beautify the area. And the economic power that comes with it. You were talking about TTC. That's another piece of legislation that I just put forward. It was the very first piece of legislation to the House when we resumed last week.
So, no more strike.
That was the request. As you know, in fact, the day I was sworn into cabinet, the City Council of Toronto deemed them to be essential, and they've asked the province to consider them as essential so as not to allow them to strike. Now, as Minister of Labor, I have a responsibility to be neutral and to represent all parties involved, including the union members. So I took it upon my role to go back to the city to clarify exactly what they would like and to advise the other stakeholders to open up discussions to enable everyone to be aware of what's coming. Bottom line is, it's not about me. It's not about the union heads. It's not about the city council. It's about the 1.5 million people that rely on the public transit.
Right.
They rely on it to go to work. They rely on it to do their to go to the hospitals, to do shopping, a number of things. It's estimated that it costs $50 million a day when there's a strike.
Wow.
And there's a huge impact on the environment when people don't, use the public transit. There's congestion. There's a number of factors that come into play. So because of the critical nature that it has and the unique nature that it has on the City of Toronto and the surrounding area, because it affects everyone in the GTA, we always said that if ever the government of Ontario, government of Toronto came to us to consider them essential, that we would give it serious consideration. And that's what we've done. And so it's now
it's in the House.
It's in the House and it's open for debate. Excellent. And people are having that discussion. And
so the impact for my listeners would be, if this bill is passed and becomes a law, then TTC driver cannot stop the bus right in the middle of the street saying, from here on, I'm on strike, go catch something else.
Right, and what has happened in the past is there have been work stoppages, and we always mandate them to go back to work after a day or 2 or 3, depending upon the situation. So as a result of that, and the workers want a fair shake. Everybody wants to do their part, but
but the show must go on.
The people who rely on the public transit, and the city has made it clear that they would like it to be so. So we've put it forward so that
of course,
that the City of Toronto can have their public transit in a way. Now, that doesn't stop the bargaining process, doesn't stop the collective agreements. They'll have to do those negotiations. Should they come to an impasse, then it comes to an arbitrator independently to determine the outcome.
The negotiation does not suffer. It's just the stoppage of services, which is an essential service, which would otherwise stop the wheels in motion.
Right.
That amazing task. Occupational health and safety.
A year and a half or so ago, there were 4 individuals that died in a swing accident, and it was determined that we needed to do better to try to provide safety in our workplaces so that dads and moms, when they go to work, they know that they can come home safely. The Ministry of Health, or Ministry of Labor, our responsibility is to the workplace. And we commissioned a report, a panel, who came back with 46 recommendations.
Wow.
One of them was to take away the prevention of WSIB, move it into the ministry, and appoint a chief prevention officer. So I agreed that we will do that immediately. Once that came forward, I'm going to enact the recommendations, and I've already commenced the discussions. I've approved an interim council of business and unions to enable that. And I should say to the listeners, it's that we have a website and access in Urdu and in all languages, because everyone has their rights. And part of the recommendations was to ensure that mandatory training exists, especially in those hazardous situations. So those things are being made available.
And especially from the people who have immigrated from cultures and countries where practices are slightly different than what they are in Canada. So we must protect, and I'm glad that your ministry is taking action and taking notice of certain situations and protecting the workers. Charles, it has indeed been a pleasure having you on the show. What our show tonight is going to do is besides talking about specific points that we discussed in this short time, it also sends a message to our listeners that you got to ask questions. Political process is something in Canada that you have to become a part of. Become a part of the political process not only by voting, but also by contesting, but also for running. Do other things. Meet your political representative, see what they have in store for you, see what they're doing, ask questions, because if you do not ask questions, they would not know how well or how bad they have performed. Thank you very much for coming into the show tonight, Charles. We really acknowledge your presence there, and the Pakistani diaspora in Canada will also thank you for all the efforts that you have done so far.
And thank you for having this show. It's so important for everyone to recognize that everyone plays their part.
Everyone plays their part, and we leave you with this, that everyone must play their part. Thank you, and bye.